Hi, it's Arenthew here again with another Northwind video. This time I'll talk about how to make money through trade for late game players. Not just in the form of pounds, but also rare items like gems or pelts or whatever it might be. And in terms of the types of trading, I guess you would have two categories, right? You would have the basic goods and you would have the rare items. By basic goods, I kind of mean items that you can consistently collect. Like that mahogany tree is always going to be in that same valley, or that gold deposit is always going to be in that same cave. And included with that would be products that are made out of these basic goods, right? Like Milton rifles will always be made out of mahogany and wolfram, right? And those two resources are going to be in the same places. And these resources are usually common. I mean, you might have gold, but gold isn't really that rare. You just need to know where to look. The materials, or like even the products that are made from these materials exclusively, aren't really going to have much value, especially to veteran players or players that have been on the game for a while, right? Since the veterans have most of the money in the game, you're going to have to target a different audience to make any money. The reason why the target demographic of these basic goods are for new players is because a lot of them don't have mastered crafting levels, right? So since they can't really collect things like wolfram, for example, or they can't craft a Milton rifle because they don't have master smithing, they're going to want to ask anyone if they can craft those items for them, right? Because they don't have a high enough level in their professions for the item that they want. In a lot of situations, they'll pay out of their nose to get an upgrade for their toolkit, right? And I guess for the noob market, the pros of that market are that the barrier to entry is quite low for the amount you have to invest in it, right? Like, you don't really need any pound, you don't need any rare items to begin with to trade with, right? Because usually in other markets, you're going to need gems or rare items of one form or another so that you can trade up to better value, right? And I guess one more benefit is that given supply and demand is the same, the more you grind, the more money you make, right? So it's consistent because all of those materials are all going to be in the same place. So generally, more grinding is positively correlated with the amount you make. Because again, there's no RNG in the materials that are going to be needed, right? Like that mahogany tree in that valley in James Bay isn't all of a sudden going to have a 50% chance of spawning, right? Like, it's always going to be there. And I guess for the cons, one of the main thing is the stability of the amount you make, right? Like, you might make a lot when there is a huge update that comes into the game because a lot of noobs join the game. So there's a large market for your services. But once you get into a time when updates don't really come very consistently, you're going to get into a situation where new players eventually level up their professions, so your services aren't needed anymore. So it's gonna be very hard to make any money in the game. I remember just when Northwind became free, you had an influx of noobs coming into the game, right? So I was able to sell Miltons for maybe 500 pounds, and I tested the market a bit, and apparently other people were selling it for 800, so I raised my prices. And this was so profitable that I got other people to join with me, just to stand around in Beuval selling Miltons and them getting a cut out of it, and that was incentive enough for them to do all of that, right? But eventually business dipped off since new players advanced to higher levels, and some naturally left the game, right? So it was a lot harder for me to sell those same goods since there wasn't as much demand for it. Like, everyone had Bayerns at that. And the second negative, I guess, it can be a positive as well, is that you probably need master everything or master most things to be able to compete, right? Because your main selling point is that you can craft things that other people can't. And for our second topic, we're going to talk about rare items, which I think is a more complicated subject, since there really isn't a routine you can go through to make more pounds or items, because, like, it's really speculative. Like, you really have to be creative with how you sell things. It's kind of like buying stonks, but, like, you also have to pay attention to the supply and demand and the actual price of items, because the worst thing you can do for these rare items is overpay or undersell. And I can't really emphasize this enough. Like, you really have to do your research on prices, because you don't want to get scammed, because we are working with items that are worth a lot of quote-unquote pounds. Like, I'll explain how pounds will be worthless at a certain point as well. And I guess for the subcategory of rare items, we'll go over pelts, we'll go over gems, we'll go over weapons and tools. I guess to start off our subject of pelts, we have 3 or 4 types of pelts, right? Or we'll just say 3 pelts. We have brown and gray pelts, which is the first category, which is common stuff. We have black pelts, which is kind of mid-tier range as far as rarity is concerned. And we have white pelts, which are the rarest pelts usually that people try to trade with. Brown and gray pelts aren't really worth mentioning in this rare category, since it kind of goes into that first category where only noobs will usually buy those kinds of things, right? For veteran players, it's usually regarded as junk. And for black pelts, these are things that veteran players may buy. So it's in the field of view of being able to trade up to a white pelt, right? Like if you have 3 moose pelts, maybe you can trade it for 1 white wolf pelt, right? Like it's within that realm of being tradable. It's not like a brown pelt where it's kind of seen as junk. And with white pelts, these are usually the rarest pelts people are willing to trade. They can fetch some pretty high prices, but it kind of runs into the same issue as common items where the longer that there isn't an update or an influx of noobs, the price tends to drop relative to gems, for example. And that's because from my experience, a lot of people do hunt, like relative to mining, and the drop rates are a lot higher compared to gems. So if you have a bunch of people grinding with pelts, you're probably going to have a lot more pelts in the market. So the price drops over time. And another thing is that people often wear white pelts, right? So that's where the demand comes from. And since and when more people wear white pelts, then the demand goes down because they already have that item. Like if you have an entire black pelt set, you might want to upgrade to a white pelt set, right? So that might decrease the value of black pelts, but increase the value of white pelts. But once everyone has white pelt sets, then the value of white pelts goes down because everyone has it. Like it's not special anymore. So the basic rundown of the pelt market is that if people already have it, they probably don't want it, right? So if people already have black sets, they probably want white sets. If they already have white sets, they probably don't want pelts at all. One advantage is you can kind of predict the market based on what you see people wearing, right? If people are wearing black sets, then you're probably going to want to sell white sets, right? But the disadvantage is that once everyone gets to that highest level pelt set, like you're not going to be making much because there's no demand for it. Overall, I would say the pelt market is the least stable out of all rare items. You can still make a lot of pounds out of it or a lot of items out of it. But again, you just have to pay attention to what people are wearing. Moving on to the weapons and tools market, this is probably the most unstable and the most unpredictable out of all the markets we've talked about, but has the highest reward, right? But you still have to invest a lot of these rare items to get a good return on your investment. This market includes kukris and jazales and other things that you can get from treasure hunting. To kind of highlight how expensive these items are, let's just give you an example of a kukri, right? They may cost many gems, right? Like many master gems, many adept gems, and so on and so forth, just to get one, right? And I would say there are 2 reasons for why these prices are so high. First, there's a lot of RNG involved with treasure hunting, right? There's only a small chance you can get a jazale or a kukri or anything like that. It's very rare. And another thing is with treasure huntings, everyone's gunning for them, right? Like if you have a world of 20 people and 5 people are just going for that one chest, you're going to have to be good at PvP, right? And you're going to have to haul that chest all the way to the spawn. So yeah, it's high risk, high reward, but once you do get a jazale or a kukri or something, you could trade it in for so much. So I mean, if you're the one grinding for these things, I mean, potentially you can make a lot, but it's just a lot of RNG. So just expect a lot of disappointment, a lot of garbage short glaives that you just throw away. I guess for the pros, I mean, obviously you can make a lot. The cons are pretty bad for me. Like I'm not good at PvP. You have to be good at PvP. And oftentimes it's probably a good idea to go with a lot of people, since there are a lot of campers that are near spawn that will just sit there and try to take your chest away, right? Anyways, just a heads up, just prepare to be very disappointed with treasure hunting. And one more thing to add about the weapons market is that sometimes they debuff them, right? For example, jazales were the best gun in the game until they nerfed it, right? And by doing that, the value crashed. I mean, they were still valuable, but they weren't nearly worth as much as they were a day ago, right? And there was this mass selling of jazales since most people use them for PvP, right? And once they weren't viable for PvP, they just wanted to sell them, right? And That's how the value lowered. And moving on to the gems market, this is probably the best market if you want to store value, right? Since there are always going to be collectors of gems, and it doesn't matter if you have 1 gem or 10 gems, right? People always want more. And the value of gems usually rise over time since everyone wants to collect them, right? So there aren't really that many in the market. The only thing with gems is that it's just really hard to predict their prices, right? Sometimes it'll be 3,000, sometimes it'll be 10,000. Like, it really depends on the gem, the color, how much of them are in the market. Like, you can't just look around and see what people are wearing. It's just really hard to predict. Some cool things you can do to increase the value of gems is like make brooches out of them. You can usually like double the price of it if you put like brass on it or something. Only thing I'll say is if people are offering pounds for your gems, even if it's like a lot for pound value or whatever, just be skeptical of that. First of all, like, you gotta actually know the approximate value of the gem, and sometimes pounds are worthless, right? Before the update where they made the game free, this was a common rule: don't buy and sell things for pounds. Items only, right? Item value only. I mean, I suspect there are a lot of pound dupers, right? So that's going to inflate pounds like crazy. And it's just a really, like, you don't want to store anything in pounds. Like, it's just going to inflate away and be worthless in a month. So yeah, just store value in any of these items, whether it's pelts, it's weapons, gems, whatever. Like, it's infinitely better than pounds. I just predict that things will be just like before the update, right? Pounds just got so inflated that they just became worthless. And I think the same thing is going to happen after the update with all these new players. Anyways, that's kind of a summary of the 3 categories of trading that most expert players need to know or already know, right? And if I missed anything, feel free to make that known in the comments. And please like and subscribe if you like my videos. Anyways, thanks for watching to the end of the video. Like, I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys later.